Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Epling,
Here.
Mr. Donato,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. St. Clair,
Here.
Mr. Stett,
Here.
and Mr. Steele and President Piper are absent this evening. We have a quorum.
All right. Do we have any issues or questions about the meeting minutes that were sent out?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve them?
I make a motion to approve the minutes, please.
Second.
Mr. Donato,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stett,
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Epling.
Yes.
Then, sir, approved 5-0.
Okay. If there is anybody here who might speak before us, please stand up and raise your right arm, right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is truthful to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Changes to the agenda. We're doing one postponed case. Are there any other changes?
Yeah, no change.
No changes? Okay. Then I will call case number 1, the Casper Residence, and we will begin with staff. You can have a seat. We'll call you in a minute.
So this is a request for a variance to the code regarding swimming pool fences. Sites on Shire Cove Road as indicated on the screen. It's located within the Shire Cove subdivision, lot number 72. The site plan on the screen shows you the general location of the existing hot tub. This is an instance where we've had some code enforcement action on the property, and this is a case to bring the site into compliance. This gives you a view of the property looking from the rear of the lot. The hot tub area is generally in the location is indicated by the arrow. This is looking from the west side of the property. There's an existing fence area here around 2/3 of the hot tub. This shows you looking from the other side. You can see the hot tub cover here. It's currently within a decking area that doesn't have the actual decking planks on. Code enforcement is working on getting some of the property maintenance issues resolved. The staff believes that there's a beneficial use of the property that can be made without the proposed variance, and the proposed variance for a variance from the pool fencing requirements are substantial. The property owner's difficulty, we feel, can be obviated through another method, and we respectfully recommend disapproval. As noted in your staff report, there are a total of 7 cases regarding the pool fencing that the board has looked at in the past, and we have noted the condition that the board has imposed in the past on those cases.
Okay, thank you. Sir, are you the applicant? Okay, would you like to come up and address us? You don't have to, but you're welcome to. That pretty well covers it?
I have the locks, you know,
In-
I don't know, there's,
But
I
before
don't understand why.
before you begin, can you state your name, please?
Mary Casper.
Okay, thank you.
I don't understand what the beneficial use of the property could be made without the proposed variance, and the variance is substantial. I don't understand what that means.
Can you go to the picture showing the fence that's there? Is this fence in compliance?
No, I believe that's one of the issues with the deterioration of the fence. Code enforcement is working to either have that remedied or removed.
If it were not deteriorating, would it be in compliance?
No, according to the code, the hot tub currently by definition is considered to be a swimming pool. And so it's required to have a fence around all four sides to be fully enclosed with a self-latching and closing or locking gate.
Okay.
I still don't understand.
Maybe I can help shed some light on there could be beneficial use without this variance. You've been using this property for X number of years without this variance.
Came with a house when we bought it 30 years ago.
Yeah. So you've had beneficial use of the property. And if this is not fits your definition, please correct me. But you've had beneficial use of the property without this variance. That's what,
I didn't even know about it until this last fall, or last spring.
maybe you could shed some light on what beneficial use means.
What that generally means is that there are other methods by which you can comply with code to still be able to use the property. You know, if the board so chose not to grant the variance for the locking hot tub cover and required the fence to be put in per code, there's still a way per code to actually utilize the property.
So this is this is not a new hot tub being installed. This is the existing hot tub that,
Been there for 30 years. It was installed in '92 by the prior owner, and as well as the deck.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? Okay, do we have a motion? I will make a motion to approve a variance from Hilliard Code Section 1121.02D5 to permit a locking cover in lieu of a fence around a hot tub with the requirement that the hot tub remains covered and locked when not in use.
I'll second.
Mr. Stepp?
No.
Mr. Martin?
no.
Vice Chair Epling?
Yes.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
And Mr. St. Clair?
No.
The motion has failed 3-2.
All right. Case number 2, Chase Bank 4199 Parkway Lane, and staff.
This is a request for a new Chase Bank to be located at the corner of Cemetery Road and Parkway Lane on the southwest side as shown on the site plan. This gives you a view looking at the site from Cemetery Road toward the south. In particular, note the significant grade change due to the railroad overpass, as well as all of the existing vegetation along the rail line. Currently, the site is a Coda Park and Ride. Due to levels of ridership, they're looking to split this into 2 different developments. So to maintain the Coda Park and Ride on the south portion of the site, and then to install a 3,400 square foot bank on the northern half along Cemetery Road. So what's shown on the screen gives you an idea of the existing pavement. The bank will be located within that area in general. They're looking to actually slightly reduce the impervious pavement on the site. So this shows you the site plan and in general where the property line will be located that was approved by the Planning Commission as a lot split in their meeting last week. The commission also approved the Level B site plan for this as well. The proposed architecture, the building will be located up along Cemetery Road. As noted in your staff report, we originally had a variance noted in there for the building setback, but upon further review of the code, there's actually a provision that allows for the reduction in the setback if you're placing parking behind the building, so that variance is no longer being requested. One of the variances has to do with minimum lot size. The Planning Commission was generally okay with the idea of splitting this into two pieces, even though it was below the 2-acre minimum. What's shown on the screen is the original plat for the property. At the time that this was platted, it was actually over 2 acres and could legally be split according to the 1-acre minimum lot size. What's shown is some of the right-of-way takes that have been taken away from the property over time for road, railroad, and intersection improvements. Because of those public improvements, the lot has actually been shrunk below the 2-acre minimum, which is why we're here requesting the variance to create a 0.89 acre parcel. They're also requesting a variance for the rear yard setback. This is going to be a joint parking lot between Coda and the Chase Bank that will use a cross-access agreement as shown by the dotted line here. In general, the parking lot will provide for significant level of parking for both the bank and the levels of use that they need for the Coda Park and Ride. They're requesting a rear yard setback to place the dumpster as well as the ATM along the rear joint property line that runs through the parking area. They're also requesting a street tree waiver. There are significant utilities that are located along Parkway Lane, as well as the steep grade change due to the railroad overpass. So for those reasons, we really can't place street trees in those areas. And so we're requesting as part of the conditions that those inches in street trees be placed on site or in an appropriate location as deemed necessary by the city forester. They're also asking for some slight modification of the landscape code requirements, and we have those shown on the screen. They're asking to reduce the buffer width along Parkway Lane from 20 to 10 feet. The existing condition is basically at 10 feet, and so they're attempting to maintain the current pavement area. They are actually, though, placing the appropriate amount of landscaping along Parkway Lane within that 10-foot buffer. They're asking to eliminate the required 10-foot buffer along the southern property line because the parking lot is being shared between the two parcels that would be created. They're also asking to waive the landscaping that's required along the railroad because of the intense vegetation that's currently there. So providing those landscape elements would really serve no purpose. The code also requires a limit to parking beyond what's required by the code, so a maximum limit. They want to increase the maximum parking from 20 to 31 spaces. And part of that is due to the fact that this is going to be maintained as a joint area between the Coda Park and Ride and the bank. And then they're also looking to modify the ATM stacking and aisle requirements. The zoning code requires a width of 14 feet. We've very recently heard a request from a car wash application to the same effect. They're looking to reduce that from 14 feet to 9 feet. Originally, as noted in your information, it was 8 feet, but based on further discussions with Chase, Chase would like to maintain at least 9 feet of pavement. So they're looking to actually just shrink this island up a little bit so that they can accommodate the extra 12 inches of pavement.
Is it 9 feet or 8 feet?
It is now proposed to be 9 feet, so they're actually more compliant with code.
Okay, because it was eight feet, what I'm...
It's 8 feet in your staff report, but as of today, in talking with them, they wanted to modify that to 9 because Chase is actually going to require more pavement. So staff believes that the property has multiple site constraints. that include impacts from the rail line, right-of-way improvements and takes that have occurred in the past, as well as the topography of the site. We feel that the proposed development is generally consistent with the code and keeping with the recommendations of the community plan to get buildings up closer to Cemetery Road, and we believe that the proposed development will not adversely impact the area. So we recommend approval with the 6 conditions that are indicated in the staff report.
Any questions for staff?
How many entrances will there be to this location?
In terms of auto access, they're utilizing the existing curb cut, so there'll be 1 curb cut as it stands now.
And that will also, the buses will be coming in there too, or?
The buses actually have a turnaround that is just south of that, so it's completely separate from auto traffic.
So they're not getting into that at all?
No.
They're share the parking with them, correct?
Correct, the parking will be shared. So south of that proposed lot split line, there's actually additional parking that will be maintained as part of the CODA site.
And the existing trees on Cemetery Road, would they still be there, or they're going to?
There are a few that are shown in the plans that will be removed due to the fact that they have some construction activity. Those are being replaced per code.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So if you look at the applicants, Central Ohio Transit Authority is included in the applicants, but none of these variances would have to do for anything with CODA.
The variance for the lot size would impact the parent tract. But otherwise, all of these variances are applicable to the proposed site for Chase.
Who's the property owner? Is CODA still the property owner, or?
Currently, CODA is the owner. They own the parent tract, and this is an agreement to potentially split that piece off so that Chase can develop.
Is Chase buying the land, or is CODA going to maintain ownership of the land?
It's our understanding that it will be sold to Chase or whatever,
they'll split it in
whatever, element, maintains their properties. And then there will be a joint cross-access easement to basically maintain access from the curb cut onto the Chase site.
And all the lighting and everything that's, I didn't see, the lighting is going to, the whole lot is going to be well lit.
They've submitted lighting plans that meet code. The intent is that they also meet code for all of the sign requirements, or they go to the planning commission for a sign package variance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is the applicant here? Sir, please come up, state your name and address.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Vaughn Benson. I'm with Fikenoff Macy OC Shopper Architects, 995 West 3rd Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, 43212.
Do you have a statement to make, or are you just here to field questions?
One thing, in regards to the street tree requirement, yes, we are still requesting that variance. And to compensate, we have added some additional trees on the west side of the building, being that we would not be able to plant them for the reasons stated along Parkway Avenue or Cemetery Road. I have some updated site plans if you would like to see those.
Okay, you're welcome to pass them out.
Do you have enough for staff to, or they already got? Okay.
Thank you.
We can share one if there's not enough.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Are you only developing the Chase side? You're not touching anything related to the Central Ohio Transit Authority side?
That is correct.
Staff, these variances apply to both lots, right, after the split?
Yeah, so the lot area requirement will make both legal if they're under an acre, yes.
Okay.
In your opinion, how would you compare the landscaping package on the Chase Bank side to the Central Ohio Transit Authority side?
I feel that it meets the requirements as close as possible. It's in the same nature and tone of what is being requested best as possible, outside of the restrictions that were mentioned due to utilities or space along the property lines and existing utilities along the west where the ATM lane will be located.
I'm just wondering if there's going to end up a haves and a have-nots kind of appearance on the lot itself. Obviously, the bank side is the much more visible side, so I wouldn't necessarily see that as a downside. But I appreciate you adding the additional landscaping where it's needed, because obviously you're required to do so, but looks like this is going to landscape very nicely. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just had a question. So based on the revised plan, if you were, revised landscape, if you're comfortable with that, we can replace that, and this can be the approved
Okay,
plan, if you're comfortable with that.
sure.
We think this would be a suitable.
But this is different from what was proposed?
It's different than what you had originally, but
Right,
if you want to reference this as the approved plan,
Okay,
that would be great.
We'll just add that language to the,
add that in your, at the end of your motion.
yeah. Okay. So I'll make a motion that for case 2, BZA 22-21, to give a variance to Chase Bank for sections 111.03A, 1121.02B3, 1125.04G, 1125.05B, section 1127.03G, 1127.04B3, and 1127.04B4.
Can I add to that? It says 8 feet in here, that will be 9.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So you'll change that to 9.
Correct.
We'll make that part of the stipulations. Provided that with the variance that the applicant, we approve it with the applicant's knowledge that they'll abide by the staff recommendations, including the new change from 8 feet to 9, and including the new updated landscaping plan.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we need to include the conditions under the staff recommendations?
Yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, the motion did include the staff's 6 conditions.
Yeah, I said staff recommendations, so.
Yeah.
Correct. We'll note that in the record. Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair?
Yes?
Mr. Stepp?
Yes.
Vice Chair Appling?
Yes.
And Mr. Donato?
Yes.
The motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you. Yes.
I would just like to ask the applicant when they're anticipating breaking ground. Would that be okay? When do you anticipate breaking ground? Thank you.
Okay. Case 3, Witt's Frozen Custard. Staff.
So this is a request for variance to permit gravel as a parking surface. The site is shown on the screen in Old Hilliard along Main Street, shown in the yellow circle. This gives you a close-up of the property looking toward the east. This is a Witt's Frozen Custard. The area that's under consideration is the gravel area that's shown in the rear of the lot here. And this is a close-up that gives you a little more details to the area. The site was originally approved for the frozen custard location in 2016. This gives you a view of what the site looked like, as well as prior to construction for that. So it had grass in the rear of the property. The site plan that was approved is shown on the screen here for a one-way circulation around the building, and then to have some additional parking toward the back with a dumpster enclosure. Over time, that pavement was expanded out by gravel or other material onto the site. And then as of this past February, with I believe some code enforcement action or follow-up, there's striping and improvements done to the existing pavement. And then in question is the area that's shown in gravel. This gives you a better close-up of the site plan that was approved in 2016, and then the area that we're looking at the rear of the property. Staff finds that the use of gravel for commercial retail area is not appropriate, and it's a substantial departure from the code, in particular because of the level of traffic. When we talk about pavement, it's required surface for all parking within the city, whether it's asphalt or pavement. Particularly for retail use, that provides opportunity for gravel to find its way onto the public street. We feel that there can be a beneficial use of the property without the variance, and that the initial approvals, specifically from the commission, required that the parking lot be paved and brought into compliance with the code. So for those reasons, we respectfully recommend disapproval.
I just have one question. And what the report I read earlier said that gravel coming out into the street is the primary concern. Is that a concern here with it? It would have to travel over their parking lot and then past their building over the sidewalk and then into the street. Does that happen here?
There is potential for that. In the past, when we've looked at variances, they've been for uses that are very low impact. In recent months, we've looked at a residential case of where they had a long lane that was proposed to be gravel after a certain portion when they were adding on a garage. Other particular uses that are very low usage, such as access drives back into utility areas for power companies or things of that nature. But when we're looking for specifically retail type uses where you have heavy turnover, you have the potential for lots of pedestrian activity. The idea of gravel, migrating across pavement is something that we would have concern with.
And if we deny the variance, then there just won't be, I mean, what will they do? Will they have to tear the gravel up and put grass in or put blacktop in? Because if you put blacktop in, then you've got parking space issues, don't you?
Yeah, can you go back to the picture with the striping and whatnot?
Because
Nobody's parking there today, are they?
They have had people parking on this. I believe code enforcement followed up with them to prohibit that because it wasn't complying with the code. This was the layout that was approved back in 2016 when they originally were opening. And the intent of that approval was that they complete that parking lot arrangement. And that was, I believe, recently done. If they wanted to expand, the gravel, again, does not comply with code, but they could certainly request from the Planning Commission, an extension of that. And looking at this, you basically have a 60-foot wide area that you could reconfigure the parking and the dumpster if they truly wanted to add more parking onto the site.
Has there been any conversations between staff and the property owner as to why it was covered in gravel?
That you would have to ask the applicant.
you'll get your turn. Any other questions for staff? Okay, and the applicant is here. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Judy Vitale. I'm the owner of the property at 4138 Main Street. And can I make a statement, or do I just?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just a small business owner. I'm not a huge conglomerate, and I'm only asking for one variance. And this is mostly on behalf of the city of Hilliard and my employees, and the property owners around me who, this has been an ongoing issue. There's a lack of parking. And so, we live in, or we operate out of a small building in Old Hilliard. Old Hilliard is old. I mean, that's, the building that we do business out of has been there since 1940. We use the curb cuts that the city put in, for our driveway. We couldn't really move the building. That's not an option. So we maximized our parking according to this committee's recommendation 5 years ago. And we were required to leave a certain percentage of the property unpaved for green space. So our property is maximized as far as paving goes. Like I said, that building has been there since 1940. It used to be the old Atkins Barber Shop. And, in removing some of the pavement in the back that we were required to do, we found that, that entire lot had been gravelled and used as a parking lot at some point a long time ago. And then the previous owners had paved a certain amount over the gravel. So that's where we stand. So I am not asking for additional customer parking. All I'm asking is that my employees, who pull in and they stay there for, 6 hours. They're not pulling in and out. They're not, they're there till 11 o'clock midnight, that they can park back there, and then the customers would just park them in. So, and this is just for the sake of, Old Hilliard and the lack of parking. I mean, I left there just now on my way here. There's a brand new business that opened right across the street. All right, this was 6:30. There's nowhere to park on the street. There were no parking spaces. So, it's just my attempt, my effort to, garnish a few more street parking spaces for the businesses around me and for my employees so they can park back there at night and not have to walk down the street. So, like I said, it's not going to be retail traffic that's coming and going. It's for employees who will stay there and will be parked in by the customers who will park on the paved striped parking.
Do you ever see gravel in the street?
No, I don't see gravel in my parking lot. No, because, the drainage, everything drains towards the back of the lot. So the pavement is, it's graded towards the back of the lot.
So the way this, in my mind, the way it sounds like this transpired is that the city found this, came to you and said, you didn't request to have a gravel parking lot back here, or did you?
So I requested, and my request was to provide a solution to the lack of parking spaces in Old Hilliard by allowing WIT's employees to park on the gravel site at the back of the property beyond the paved parking lot south of the dumpster. This will better serve the citizens of Hilliard by creating 3 additional parking spaces on our lot, which will free up parking availability on the street.
I've got 2 questions.
Sure.
When you first did this, I see you've just drawn the line there. Did they ask you not to go any further with your pavement?
Yeah.
So you were told not to go any further at that point?
Yes, by this committee, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Second of all, the people behind you, do you have any complaints at all from the neighbors?
The only complaints that I get from the neighbors is a lack of parking in the area.
Okay.
I mean, James next door parks in the street, and he's had his car hit twice in the last 5 years because he's in
So,
the street.
so my problem is, and I live in Old Hilliard, on the corner of Main and North. So I'm very familiar with your location and all locations. I tend to agree that it does set some type of precedent that if this is approved, then the next people that want to have a gravel extension to their parking lot or whatever that is, yeah.
Well, I mean, do you use that rule on all the variances that you grant?
I'm sorry.
You-
When was the gravel installed?
Like I said, it's been gravel for, it's, when we took up that concrete, see that, you can see that middle parking lot, there's a little edge of the concrete that's showing there. We had to take that up because the city required, because you guys required that we removed some of the pavement on our lot. And there, it was just filled with gravel underneath there. See that concrete right in the middle? And the grass had grown over it over time because it hadn't been, I mean, the building was vacant for quite a while before we took it over. No one was mowing the lawn. It was completely overgrown.
So you didn't add extra gravel back there?
Not that I can recall.
Well, go to the pic, so this was when the approval, this is from 5 or 6 years ago. So it was grass. So the concern, one of the concerns is with gravel is the stormwater management. Because
Right.
because when you have the grass, it'll infiltrate, but gravel does not. So part of the plan was to provide parking in the back here, but to keep that green area. The reason that the pavement was supposed to come out is so there's more green area because stormwater flows that way so it can percolate into the grass and not go off-site inappropriately. So that was the intent. Now, there are things you can do if you have gravel or if you have pavement expanded to the back, but you might have to put in a drain or, that kind of thing. So there are other things that come into play if you do something other than the grass or the dirt.
So was it considered a violation to have the employees of the property park on that grass portion? Was that considered a code violation?
Yes. You have to parking's only permitted on an improved surface, which is asphalt or concrete or
Okay.
some other approved surface.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here would deny that the more parking we can get in Old Hilliard, the better off everybody is. There's no question about that. The question is, what's the best way to get there? And looking at the improvements of the entire community and making certain that we adhere to the standards as best we can.
Was this grass on top of the gravel, like growing through the gravel, or was this, do you recall? I mean, I remember this.
Well, walking the site, I don't remember
was,
noticing
yeah, because-
gravel under it, but,
Yeah.
you know how that happens. I mean, if you can put gravel down and then over the years it'll disappear into the dirt or be ground up or whatever, it goes outside. But if it's compacted gravel, you're not gonna get grass growing on it.
Right. So is the requested variance, it's not to park back there, it's just to have the gravel? I mean, that,
No, it's the
But
park, it's the.
so it is to park back there. So it's to have the gravel and to park back there.
Correct.
For employees, when they, they come, they open the store and they're there for 6 hours.
Yeah, they're not coming and going. Gotcha.
They're not coming and going. They're parked.
Yeah, so it's essentially, do you find it appropriate for that gravel area to be used for employee parking, is basically the.
Yeah, I interpreted it as, I mean, it's, if you're using it as parking, I wouldn't have a problem with that. The question is whether it should be paved or whether it should be grass or whether it should be gravel.
To be clear, the applicant is seeking a variance to permit gravel as a parking lot surface
Okay.
within the rear of the commercial building. We have a question from Ms. Hale.
All right, this is for John. So going back, I heard initially that that was supposed to be left open for green space. So is it a variant as well to remove the green space? Because it seems like there's two different things I'm hearing.
Maybe, I mean, there's a couple things. To have parking spaces where proposed, where the gravel's proposed, would mean you're double stacked, right? That requires a variance because there's no access drive next to it. It probably would, I don't know what the distance is from the edge of the gravel to the property line, but our code requires a landscape buffer with a certain number of plantings on the perimeter of parking lots. So it would certainly be a variance to that, I would imagine.
Would it be a possibility to add some landscaping to the back of that property to screen the headlights and things like that from shining into the adjacent property?
Sure, we could. There's already a row of trees, but we could add a double row behind their garage.
Well, you're looking at things down a little lower that would screen headlights and things like that. Is that something that you would be okay with?
Sure.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Okay. Do I have a motion? I will make a motion to approve a variance from Hilliard Code Section 1121.02D1I. Oh, sorry. To approve a variance from Hilliard Code Section 1127.04B1 to permit gravel as a parking lot surface within the rear yard of a commercial building on 0.195 acres.
I'll second.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. Donato? Mr. St. Clair?
No?
Vice Chair Appling?
Yes.
And Mr. Stepp?
Yes.
The motion fails 3-2.
Case 4, the BZA Residence. Take it away, staff.
This is a request for variances to fence code for property located at the corner of Jenny Dawn Place and Crandon Street, as indicated on the screen. The property is located, it's lot 216. Some of the site characteristics that are of importance with this particular lot is 30-foot stormwater management easement at the rear of the lot. The orange line on the screen indicates the platted building line at 25 feet on both street frontages. What's proposed is to do a combination of decorative, 4-foot decorative fence as shown in green, and then to use a 6-foot privacy fence around the remainder of the rear yard as indicated in the red. This shows you image of the site looking toward the east, so you can see the general area on the second frontage street where the fence is proposed to be located. This is a particular case that was brought forward by code enforcement. They were in the process of getting a fence permit, and then upon inspection, it was noted that the fencing was being installed without the approved permit. So this shows you the section of decorative fence along Cranston Street, and then a section of the privacy fence that was being installed on the opposite side of the lot. What the code allows in this case is for the implementation of a 6-foot privacy fence that has to follow the building line along the second frontage street. That would be one option to comply with code. Second option, which was in the recent code amendment passed by council at the end of last year, allows for a 4-foot decorative fence to be applied from the front elevation of the building to the midpoint on the building line. So in the case of this, it could extend 12.5 feet from the street frontage, as shown here in the yellow line. What's proposed would actually be a 14.4 foot setback with the decorative fence in this location in the yellow that would transition into the 6-foot privacy fence. The code specifically prohibits changing fence type along a property line. So in this case, utilizing the two different fence types would be a variance from the code. In addition, the variance also calls for the addition of the 2 feet. By putting the 6-foot privacy fence in that location, it exceeds the 4-foot height that's allowed in the existing code. Staff finds that the intent of the new code is passed by city councils to provide greater flexibility for corner lots, as we've indicated, while avoiding visual obstructions along the street. In particular, that's why privacy fences are generally not allowed to go forward to the building line on the second frontage. The proposed variance, we feel, can be addressed by either utilizing the decorative fence along the entire frontage or utilizing the privacy fence in the location that's allowed per code. So in our assessment, the applicant has not demonstrated a hardship or a practical difficulty that would necessitate variance from the code, and we respectfully recommend disapproval.
Any questions for staff?
Is it just the one side where they started with the decorative and they want to go, now they want to go to where that stopped, they want to go to 6 foot? And so is that the only side that if they were to continue with the decorative all the way to the end, would that be allowed?
If they continued with the decorative along Cranston Street all the way to the back property line, they would generally be in compliance with the code.
Okay, then they could go to the 6 foot back there, correct?
They could do the 6 foot along the rear property line, and I believe they've already started to implement the fence around the opposite side of the property. I don't know to what extent. I believe they were in the process of installing that when code enforcement halted the installation. The other concern with the installation without the approved permit is that the fact that there's a stormwater management easement that's platted through the back of the lot. That's specifically addressing stormwater for the subdivision. So there's the potential that if any of this fence is already installed, they may have to basically adjust that or tear it down and reinstall it to meet the engineering requirements.
Yeah, it's a big drop off back there. I've went by it. Pretty deep.
So is the section that they need a variance on just the green line, the green vertical line on the left?
Correct. This is where they are proposing to put the 6 foot privacy fence.
Okay, and everything else is not subject to this application?
Well, except the 6 foot privacy fence along the rear and that closer to the street than the 25 foot build line will also need a variance. That's forward to the face of the house.
Oh, I see.
See what I mean? So, yeah, so if you were fine with the fence coming out to the halfway point,
It says,
and then being a 6 foot privacy fence from that point all along the rear property line, that would require a variance as well.
is that rear property line considered a secondary front lot line?
No.
That would be the rear property line.
It says here that the request is, I see 2 requests to permit a 6 foot privacy fence along a secondary front lot line and to permit more than one fence type. I don't see anything about the rear.
Well, that might be an oversight, but to have a 6 foot fence forward of the build line requires a variance. So the area where that's shown is in the, well, from the 25 foot line to Crandon Street right-of-way line, that section along the rear property line is in the secondary front.
Can you show us the neighborhood map again? Thank you. Okay.
So, yeah, So yeah, to get the 6-foot privacy fence along the full rear property line out to the new halfway point from the build line to the street does require, that, what is that, 12 and a half feet? That section would require variance.
Okay.
But you would rather have that than have two different fences on that rear property line. It would wouldn't look as
Yeah,
good.
no issue with that.
Yeah, so
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
So you're saying that that rear fence, will that butt up next to the chain link fence that's on their, that their neighbors have behind them? Or would there be a big gap between the two?
it could be right up next to it.
What concern do you have with impeding stormwater drainage?
Our concern is simply the installation was done without the approved permit, so that it was not correctly reviewed and approved as far as the plan submittal. So there may be an issue of, if the privacy fence has already been installed along that rear of the property line, that there may be some modifications necessary to make it compliant.
And that's all part of the permitting process.
Correct,
It's not what we're considering.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if staff finds that everything's okay after everything, then they can just keep going along with it? Okay.
Once a permit is approved.
So primarily, the variance is on the same line of fencing, having two different types of fence.
Correct, switching the fence along a common property line, and then because you're putting the privacy fence forward of what the code allows, a variance on the height from 4 feet to 6 feet.
Okay.
As you're looking at this picture on the right-hand side, with that privacy fence coming all the way out to the front of the house, the build line, past the build line, that's against code too, is that right?
Could you repeat the question?
All right,
That's not past the build line.
I thought you could only come the halfway point of, as you look at the right-hand side of this schematic, you can bring a 6-foot privacy fence all the way out to the very front of the house. Is that correct?
To the
Corner of the house.
to the corner.
Face of the house, not forward of the face of the house on either street side.
Okay.
Although, so for example, on this one, I mean, so you're seeing that 6-foot privacy fence along the build line, even though it's a couple of feet in front of the house. Is that what you're asking?
I thought I understood that you could come halfway. You didn't have to stop at the back of the build line, the rear of the house, which the code used to be. You were now allowed to bring it all the way out to the front build line of the house. And I thought I understood you could only come halfway with a 6-foot privacy fence.
I'm not sure what
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
you could come off the back corner. So on this, the back corner of the house closest to Crandon Street, the way our code is, a 6-foot privacy fence could go from there straight to the rear property line.
Okay.
But to go closer to the street than the face of the house requires the ornamental fence design, that aluminum wrought iron style. Right. 4-foot maximum.
That's what I'm saying. So is this side within code right now?
Yes.
Because this is 6 foot.
Yes, so on that side, they can go all the way, they're not going forward of the face of the house. They're not going closer to Jenny Dawn right-of-way line with that. So they can be from the front corner of the house all the way back. Yeah, that's fine. It's just when you're on that street side, it was where the issue is.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for case number.
Oh, wait, before you do, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I will point out that there was some public input. There was an email from Andy Volhop in support of this variance.
Before I make this motion, I need to make sure that I'm saying it's okay to continue what's going on, because Or do I don't want this, I don't want to change that. I want it to be the fence to be the decorative fence all the way down. If we vote for this,
The application, I think, is what we have to,
You can make a motion with conditions on it.
right.
Yeah, you can make a motion with conditions. Even though we didn't recommend one, but you could. If the board decides to approve something that we didn't recommend, that's fine. But you can by condition adjust what's permitted. It's not an up or down only on what they're proposing. You could make a motion that says, that you could put an 8-foot tall shadow box fence on there as long as, whatever. You could write a condition on it. You could tell them that they could come out to the sidewalk if you wanted. But that's different than what they're proposing. So you can either recommend for exactly what they're proposing, or you can make some adjustment to that if you like.
What do you have in mind?
well, I don't want to, I want that to be all one side, one,
Well, you could make the motion
yeah, I will make the.
different,
for that.
and that would be one continuous, consistent fence, and then,
They're asking it to be 2 fences right now, correct?
Right.
Okay, then
So
that's,
I think you should just vote no against their
yeah, exactly.
request, because,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're requesting.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if you,
I'll make-
but I would also think this, there's the fence along the halfway point of the build line. And if you think that's appropriate, but you also think it's appropriate to connect from the end of that along the rear property line with so in that section there, a 6-foot fence, 6-foot privacy fence, that's different than if you vote the thing down, then from the 25-foot build line out to Crandon would have to be the ornamental.
Well, why do we have that yellow line running the whole length on the left?
That's code.
it's showing the midway point of the easement. Basically, they can come out to that midway point of the easement.
Yeah.
That's what they just changed the code with.
Yeah.
Because there are so many
Correct.
fences that everybody was giving up so much of the side yard, and I agree, it didn't look good to go ahead and have somebody build the high privacy fence all the way out. And so the middle ground that you struck was, if you want to gain the extra yardage, you can, but you can't do a tall privacy fence.
Correct.
So that's my understanding of what's happened, and I support that. I don't support having 2 types of fence in one row. I think that would not look professional and wouldn't enhance the neighborhood. So
So then, all you need is a variance for that back fence. If, let's say the board agrees that we want that line on the left, you can put the 4-foot fence all the way back. You still need a variance for the 6-foot privacy from that corner over
Yes.
to the,
I'd be good with that.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Okay.
So what he said.
It sounds like well,
Well, let me ask you this, if we vote no on this, can you make those recommendations to them and then come back to us with it?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
The recommendations we're saying, or we just build it into the motion?
Yeah, if you're so inclined, I would just I would just make that your motion.
So just change what they're asking, changing what they're asking to what we would approve.
If that's okay with staff?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Whatever you,
I'd be of the opinion to vote it down and then let them come back
Yeah,
and say,
exactly.
this is what we wanted, this is what we'll do to alleviate this.
it just requires them to do another application fee and, another month, whatever. It's up to you.
I think at a very minimum, I mean, we can do multiple motions, so, right?
Yeah.
Suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I could do one motion, it get voted down, and then make another motion, right?
Sorry, so if I understand what you're saying you would make one motion, everyone would vote on it. Then depending on how that went, somebody, maybe you, would potentially make a second motion.
Right.
On the same case.
Same case.
Sure, got warm in here.
I'm trying to think through it. Just give me 1 second. Let me look at the code.
I was trying to save some time.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
yeah, no, and I would like to
if
as
you
well.
wanted to do that, why not just make a motion on what you would permit?
Of course, I'm inclined to grant the applicant, grant the application. And if the board is not otherwise inclined, then I think at the bare minimum, it sounds to me like at least 2 or 3 of you would support the variance on that back left
Yes.
Yes.
portion.
People beg forgiveness, you know.
Instead of asking for permission. Yeah, that isn't.
Let's vote on it, right? Let's just vote on it the way it is then.
Okay, so just the way it's submitted.
Okay, the way
Vote
it's
on that.
submitted.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of BZA 22-23, for approval of the variances of the Hilliard Code Section 1121-02D1I to permit a 6-foot privacy fence along the secondary front line in lieu of required 4-foot decorative aluminum fence in Section 1121.02D1G to permit more than one fence type per property line.
I'll second that.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. Donato? Mr. St. Clair?
No?
Mr. Stepp?
No.
And Vice Chair Appling?
Yes.
Motion has failed 4-1.
All right. Do we have another motion? Okay.
Yeah.
Case 5, Amazon Data Center. Staff.
Okay, so this site consists of 6 parcels. As you can see here, they are all zoned in M1 Restricted Industrial District, and then the data center is a permitted use for the site. So to the south, you have Scioto Darby Road, to the east, I-270, and then to the north is CSX Railroad and the Conrail Railroad crossing to the west. And then here's just another view looking northward. And the site plan that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved last week does intend to use the majority of the site. So the primary structures here are 7 data center buildings located in the center of the site. The majority of these buildings will be used for the data center technical facilities as well as some office buildings. There are also some support services buildings such as the security building and other areas located throughout the site. To the southeast, you have an AEP substation and transformer yard, and access to these sites will be separate. First, you have an access drive going into the data center area, and then another separate access drive exclusive to the AEP substation. So 4 of the buildings on the site are proposed to be 62 feet and 7 inches tall. The maximum building height for buildings in M1 districts is 45 feet tall, and the applicant is requesting a variance for 63 feet. The structure and materials, the general architecture does fall in line with the 1-story buildings on this site, as well as the architecture used for the data center buildings used in an Amazon site located in between Cosgray and Leopard Roads that was approved in 2021. So here's just another view kind of giving you a better idea of how these buildings would look. So the grade does increase as you move northward through the site, and the range, the difference between the 2-story buildings and the view on I-270 is about 30 feet. So this image over here kind of shows what that might look like when you're on I-270 traveling. The site plan does locate the 4 2-story buildings along I-270 and not towards the western side of the site, which is zoned PUD. And then this is just a view of a data center building, which is located by Hayden Run. This building is 1 story tall, but it's around 30 feet in height, so it kind of gives you an image of what that 30-foot height difference would look like when you're on I-270 for those 2-story buildings. And then here is another image of the data center by Hayden Run. This over here is the 2-story building, office building. Again, very similar architecture and plan from this site for the proposed data center site. And then here you can see the 1-story data center complexes down here.
Did you say that's an office building to the south of those data center buildings?
No, it's a 2-story data center building.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one that's under construction now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the height of that one? Is that 63?
I don't know, it's similar probably to the ones you're talking about. I forget
We didn't have to hear this?
No, this is just showing you an example of what that looks like. They've got one currently underway. That zoning district allowed a taller building, so I didn't come back here.
Oh,
So the M1 district, the maximum height is 45 feet. They need to go above that. And anyway, but just to show that it's a similar construction that's happening up the street.
And so then moving on, the application does locate fences on the front yards of the property. So you have Scioto Darby Creek Road here, as well as I-270 over here. And so the applicant is requesting that fencing do be permitted on these front yards, as well as more than one fence type along a single property line. You might not be able to see it as clearly here, but there is a double row of fencing that goes around the entire perimeter of the site. These fences are proposed to be 8 feet tall, and they are exactly the same as the fences that were proposed for the approved data center plan back in 2021.
Are they consistent with what was installed on Hayden Run?
No, they're consistent, they're identical to the ones that were approved at the Cosgray Leopard facility that was.
Predates me.
So, no, so the ones on Hayden Run, there was a different outer fence. It was more of a decorative.
Yeah.
Some problems with that. This is a more secure fence. So the one on the left is the outer fence, and it's more of a mesh, and then the black vinyl clad chain link would be inside that. So out by the Bo Jackson facility, there are 4 data center buildings that were approved for that site.
Right.
This is the fencing that was approved around that by the planning commission. So they're doing the identical fencing treatment here. Both 8 feet tall. The reason it didn't come to this body is because that was a PUD, and they wrote in the PUD the fence details and heights and building heights out there, so it never came here. It was all part of that PUD, but it's the same detail.
And why did they change from Hayden Run?
I think this is just a more secure fence.
Okay.
All right, Abby, did you get to finish, or?
Yeah.
Oh, I did have one thing. So can you go back to the one that had the heights of the buildings and the level of the street?
Yeah, that was nice.
So the reason we wanted to show this is because at the planning commission meeting last week, there was some confusion about what the view from I-270 was going to be. And there was some thought that because on the up or down that street, as I-270 moves up and down over the railroad and over Scioto Darby Road, it gets higher in some places. And then on the east side of the road, you can actually look down on a 2-story building. That's not the case. So in this case, where you see the, starting down the bottom left, highway elevation 880, but you look at the finished floor level, that's what the building floor is going to be, 880. But you see the top's going to be 943. So the building is going to be 40-some feet above the street level. And, or even 33.5 feet above, depending on where you are along there. 30-some is probably consistent with what we saw at the facility at Hayden Run Road, from the 1-story building from there. So this building, you're gonna see the building. You're not gonna look down on the rooftop with the mechanicals and, all that kind of stuff. That was one of their concerns. The 2-story buildings will also help screen some of the 1-story buildings that are farther away. We think this is a great plan to put the taller buildings near I-270, the shorter buildings on the western side as you get close to the railroad, and then the Darby Glen subdivision.
Right.
So there was just some confusion as to what that look was going to be. This, we hope, solves that for you. One thing we didn't cover is the tree replacement,
Yeah, thank you.
and that's because we haven't gotten did you want to talk about that? We haven't gotten a tree survey from them yet, but the proposal is 300 for replacement trees on this site. They're showing on the plan 318 replacement trees, 3-inch caliper each. That's 954 caliper inches of tree on this site. Our recommendation is whatever the tree survey shows, we think the minimum number of replacement trees ought to be the 318, or the 954 caliper inches. They're spread around the site, and we think that's a fair number without doing, I just think it's not going to be possible to meet the code requirement exactly in a reasonable fashion. It's just going to be way out
Taking
there.
down too many trees?
Exactly. And so we saw a similar thing with the BMW Financial Services building. The amount of trees that were on that, I think the replacement tree requirement was going to be, just replacement trees, about $750,000 back in, 20-some years ago. It was an extraordinary number. You really can't develop reasonably with that type of number. If you would like to wait to see the survey and what the total number is, I don't think it's going to matter in our recommendation because we think that 300 trees, additional trees on this site will be good. The site's difficult. They've got, but they do have a lot of plantings on it. So we think that it's going to look nice from street level, and it's not like they're trying to skate on the tree replacement. That's a 954 inches, a lot of trees. And that's just the replacement. They've got other tree requirements based on the size of the buildings and the parking lot perimeter. So there's gonna be a hefty amount of trees on this site.
I see one of the staff recommendations is that a tree survey is provided and that tree replacement meet requirements of the code.
Yep, we were,
We're trying to give a variance.
yeah, we're anticipating that we would have the survey numbers for you by this meeting, and there's been a delay in that one. So if you would like, what I could be interested in hearing is a discussion on the fencing and the building height. And if you would rather, because that's something they want to get going on so we know design of buildings and that kind of stuff. And if you would rather have us bring it back with the survey numbers and replacement
want
trees, we can do that.
I mean, I just want to figure out a way to do it in a way that we don't have to come back.
Yeah.
So we can't, I mean, I don't think we can just say to,
Just to reduce it.
yeah, just to reduce it to, to what?
Nothing.
You could reduce it to 954 caliper inches of trees, of replacement trees.
954?
954 caliper inches
Okay.
is what will reasonably fit on this site. And I think it's a good landscape plan. So if you replace condition number 3 with that number, I mean, we still want to see the tree survey.
That's up to,
So a tree survey is provided, and that 954 caliper inches of replacement trees are provided on the site, we would be satisfied with that.
okay. Then we don't have to,
Then we'll have to come back here, yes, if you're comfortable with that. And then it would be good to hear your thoughts on the building heights. It seemed like you're comfortable with that, the 2-story height?
I don't see anybody here opposing it yet, and although I don't see anybody from the city really lobbying for it, so,
We are.
well, other than you.
The one question I would have about when you talk about different fencing along the same property, it's 2 different types of fence, but it's consistent all the way down. I mean, just with our last case, we don't want the 4-foot going into the 6-foot. That's not what you're looking to do.
No, that's just to cover this in case there's a different interpretation down the line.
So it's consistent, it's just 2 different fences.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right.
All right, is the applicant here?
Sorry, I jumped in.
Oh, there's a few more points about variances.
I thought you were done.
So I guess, you're good. So I guess the one thing to note too is that the applicant has said that they will try to maximize the existing landscaping that's along Scioto Darby as well as I-270, because leading into another variance, the 10-foot wide perimeter landscaping, they would like to request a waiver for that, so that way they do not have to do the, I believe it's 2 trees and 30 shrubs and a 10-foot wide perimeter along I-270, just because of the grading over in that area of the site, as well as the existing vegetation. They just want to really try and maximize that instead. And then parking, the site does propose parking without interior landscaping on the inside, and so it would request a variance for that as well. As you can see, these are all the areas where it is longer than 100 feet with no interior parking landscaping. And the majority of parking is in single rows and significantly goes.
Can you go back to that one? So if I may, this situation is consistent with the facility at Cosgray and Leopard. And what we did, we worked with them, and it was written into their PUD stuff. But, so the extended nature of the number of parking spaces, which doesn't meet code, we are comfortable with that because they end up providing the landscape islands on the ends of each rows along all those. And we thought that was a good move. It helps because it's built at the corners of the buildings, plus it, in most of these locations, you are not going to see these from off-site. And the number of vehicles that come to one building at a time, they all come in there. We just want to make sure that the number of spaces is adequate when they come in, because they all come in kind of in one spot at a time when they're working in a building. So we think this is appropriate, but it does need the variance, and it's the building size is a little different, but it's almost exact in terms of its application as the approved site at Cosgray Road. So we're comfortable with that arrangement.
It seems like a tremendous amount of parking.
The applicant can talk about that, but yeah.
And then, as previously mentioned, the majority of parking is inside the data center, so all of this is fenced off. The parking that would be available from outside the security fencing would be this double row parking up here towards the front. And then overall, staff finds that just the unique location and setting of the site, the proposed variances that the applicant is asking for do seem to follow the general intent of the city code, and allowing fencing variances to allow for increased security measures for the site seems appropriate. So overall, staff recommends approval with the following 7 conditions.
All right. The applicant. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Derek Leary, 7965 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. I'm with Kimley Horn, so we're the civil engineering company helping Amazon with this project. So I'm mostly here to try to answer any questions, but I wanted to expand a little bit on the landscaping surrounding 270 and the frontage. There's a large amount of existing trees that exist in the 270 right-of-way that are in the ditch, as well as in the Scioto Darby right-of-way, as well as the railroads right-of-way, that already create like a natural 30-foot buffer. And then we still have all of our replacement trees similarly along those areas as well. And so we feel there's already kind of a buffer created naturally by what's around there. And through the extensive plannings of the replacement requirements, we're still providing trees on site as well, and the other requirements. There is also, specifically along 270, a gas easement that has a high pressure line, and so we're purposely not really doing any work in this easement along there, just to ease coordination with the gas company, during construction and design in that way too.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious, what's going to be the fate, I guess I'll say, of the existing lake that's there?
So some of it is going to be retained, but some of it will get filled in. And so the north portion that's on the screen is going to be retained, but I'd say 2/3 of it, most of it along 270 would be filled in. We're not the wetlands engineer helping permit that, but there's a stream through this site. There's other various wetlands that we have to obtain the necessary OEPA permits and Army Corps permits. But that lake, our understanding is it's not regulated by anyone because it was man-made during the 270 construction.
Yeah, it was. Some monster fish in there, too.
That's what we've heard some stories, so.
What is going to be the impact of the natural screening once the fencing goes in?
You're saying, can you repeat that again?
Well, I appreciate the intent to maintain the natural screening that's already on the property. My question is, once we've talked about this double layer of security fence, are you moving that layer of security inside of that natural screening?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because there's, the natural screening I'm referring to is just off our property. It's just, so we wouldn't be able to disturb.
Oh, it's in the
it
right of
anyway.
way.
Yes, yes, on all three sides. And so, in the tree survey, you can see there's quite a bit of few trees, and it's taken a little longer than anticipated, and that's why we don't have it here. But anywhere where it's close to our grading extents, along those, and we can save an extra tree or two, once we have that, and during the construction, we can make sure we're preserving anything kind of along those natural property lines and right-of-ways.
So there was some,
I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, please.
I wanted to comment on the replacement trees as well, because how we got to the 318, we, via aerials, we found the estimated brush and kind of assumed a caliper inches per acre to kind of propose something that we thought was reasonable because we don't have that back yet. That was still trying to, met the intent of the replacement requirements, just to show you, we're intending to plant and try to meet it, but because we don't know that exact math, we felt it's 318 trees at 3-inch calipers, is how John got that number, is the intent.
How many full-time employees will be here after construction is completed?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. When we site plan and help them create these layouts, they have a minimum that they need per building is 50, but we've seen them increasing this when they have room to help combat any things they're seeing at their existing facilities, that now that the Hate and Run one's more fully operational, they're just seeing they need a little more than what they've been planning the 50 for.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, do we have a motion? I will make a motion. To approve variances to the Hilliard zoning code for 152.13 acre data center complex, section 1113.03B, section 1121.02 D1G, section 1121.02 D3, section 1121.02 D4A, section 1125.04I, section 1125.05B, section 1125.05C3, section 1127.02G, provided that the 7 conditions provided in the staff recommendation are maintained, and except for condition number 3, which I will make a change so that that condition now reads that a tree survey is provided and that 954 caliper inches of replacement trees are provided.
Second.
Mr. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stepp?
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Ebling?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Case 6 has been withdrawn, right? Still withdrawn?
That's correct.
Okay. On to case 7, the residence at 4867 Barbeau Lane.
So this is a request for a variance to Hilliard Code to permit a locking cover on a jacuzzi tub in lieu of the required fencing per code, and then a variance to reduce the required rear setback for the associated patio area from 10 feet to 8.5 feet. Property is located in the estates at Hoffman Farms, as shown on the screen. It's just south of the Tarleton West subdivision. As you can see on the screen, it's a fairly large lot, and it's located on a cul-de-sac street. This gives you a close-up of the house. There's reserve area just to the rear of the lot. And this is looking north toward the end of the cul-de-sac. So you can see the general location behind the house where they intend to put the patio space and the jacuzzi tub. It's the front shot of the house. This would be looking at the back corner. This is the general area where the patio would be extended with the pergola or overhead with the tub. This is looking from the opposite side on the south side of the side yard, and then going around the house. This again would be the general area that the improvements would be made. The area in blue is generally the patio area that would be extended off of the back of the length of the house. Plans submitted by the applicant are shown on the screen. Because the jacuzzi tub by code is considered to be a pool, the code then requires a 10-foot setback for the associated pavement or patio area. So they're requesting a reduction in that setback from 10 feet to 8.5 feet. As noted in the report, if this were a standalone patio, they would be allowed to place that up to 3 feet from the rear property line. And the overhead structure or the pergola would be allowed to be within 6 feet. And again, that's because simply the pool or the code defines a jacuzzi tub as a pool based on the depth of the water. This is a detail of the proposed plans. The jacuzzi tub is actually up by the house. They're looking to get approval to allow for a locking cover. And again, the setback, which would generally run along the extent of the patio, which basically clips just a portion of it. The staff finds that with regard to the pool variance, the cover, that there can be a beneficial use of the property without the proposed variance, and the property owner's difficulty could be addressed through a different method other than the variance. And the staff recommends respectfully disapproval on the jacuzzi cover. With regard to the setback variance, we find that the proposed modification would meet the spirit and the intent of the code, and the encroachment that's requested is minimal based on the code interpretation or definition, and the proposed impacts would not impact the surrounding neighborhood. So staff recommends approval of that request with the 3 conditions as shown on the screen.
Thank you, staff. I would like to point out that in K1, we voted down the identical variance, 1121.02D5, to permit a locking cover in lieu of a fence around a jacuzzi. That's all that's all.
Yeah, and so I'd like to also comment about that. So everybody knows that I've been consistent. And I want to ask if this is an above-ground hot tub or is it recessed in the ground? Because the other applicant, his hot tub was in the ground, which to me is more of a hazard because a 4-year-old could easily walk up and his cut. I don't want to elaborate on what we already talked about, but so in the past, we have approved locking covers on above-ground hot tubs. And so that would be my curiosity. Is this an in-ground or above-ground?
Well, yeah, well, when we get through with staff, sorry. So is it an above-ground pool that you know of or not?
We don't have that specific information, so that's something you'd have to ask the applicant.
Recall in case number 1 whether it was an above-ground or an in-ground hot tub.
We can go back to that and you can take a look.
It was incorrect.
Yeah.
No, it was flush with the deck.
Okay. All right, any other questions for staff? And the applicant may come up and please state your name and address.
My name is Judy Opalek. I'm a resident at 4867 Barbeau Lane in Hilliard. In answer to the question, it is actually an above-ground, hot tub sort of setup, similar to this. It's not quite this model, but very, very similar.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I would like clarification of the language from the recommendation. So it says that you have, sorry, let me find it here. In prior cases, the board has approved requested variances with the following condition, that a jacuzzi remains covered and locked when not in use, but that you recommend declining because we'll have a cover engaged when it's not in use. Is that the same thing?
That's the staff recommending to us that we don't vote in favor of your application.
Meaning?
That we vote it down, that you don't get a hot tub. Or that you have to put a fence around it. Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
because that's what the current code says.
Okay.
So they can't, or they would be unlikely to recommend something that was against city code.
Okay.
Same goes with pool covers that, electric pool covers, those are not compliant with the code. And you have to put a fence around the pool, but we grant variances for those on a somewhat regular basis.
Okay. I guess I still don't understand, though.
Let me explain. So the recommendation comes from us. We are not comfortable recommending when our code requires a fence around a pool. But what is mentioned is we point out to them that in the past, you have approved some of these, and here's one of the conditions that you've put on those. So we recognize that. We are contemplating some code changes that may adjust for that, but until that time, staff is not comfortable being the ones that say, yeah, it's fine to do that. Now, they can look at certain circumstances and say, and distinguish what your proposal is from any other one, and all the variance applications and voting by them they all have to stand on their own. They're not necessarily precedent setting, right? So it's supposed to be based on the circumstances related to what you're proposing and what the code says. And so they can look at what you're doing. So for example, our code, some codes would allow for pools either had to have a fence, or if it was an above-ground pool that was 4 feet above ground, and you had a lock on the ladder so that somebody couldn't climb up it, that was sufficient, and as opposed to a fence. Our code doesn't say that. But so there's ways to adjust it. We haven't adjusted it yet. Until such time as that happens, we're saying, yeah, we're not comfortable recommending approval for something that doesn't have a fence.
But if you do, then this is what we would do.
Right, but we are being clear that they have done this in the past, so whatever they're looking, the way they're reviewing these, we remind them, you've approved some of these, you've not approved some others.
Okay, that makes sense.
So as not to poison the water on this, we're saying,
Gotcha.
use your judgment.
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't clear, like approve, disapprove, like we've done it. So thank you for that clarification. And the only other thing that I wanted to point out on the image that we provided with the setback, the only place that it is less than 10 feet is in the one, sort of the middle corner. It's not the entire length of the patio. It's just, the angle of the lot kind of cuts in a little bit and nicks that corner.
Okay.
Is there a reason you don't want to put a fence around the property?
Well, no, yeah, I mean, the neighborhood, the HOA doesn't allow fences except for around pools. And, it's a hot tub, which I wouldn't consider, I mean, I know that you do, but I wouldn't consider a pool in that sense, so.
I said that in a prior case, the hot tub is covered all the time.
Yes,
Or it wouldn't be called a hot tub.
right, exactly.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Okay, I will make a motion to approve a variance from Hilliard Code Section 1121.02D5 to permit a locking cover in lieu of a fence around a jacuzzi, and from Section 1121.06F2 to reduce the required rear setback from 10 feet to 8.5 feet. And there is one condition, and that is that the jacuzzi remains covered and locked when not in use.
A second. Do we need to include staff? Is there recommendation?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, with respect to the rear setback, I will include the 3 conditions provided in the staff report as well. And will you second those again?
Yes, second that.
You second both motions? Okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
Mr. Stepp,
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Donato,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Epling.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Case 8, I will point out that this is the Jones residence, not the, I'm sorry, it is the Tom residence, not the Jones residence, at 3394 Woodland Drive. Please, staff.
This is located on Woodland Drive in Heritage Preserve, as shown on the screen. It's located adjacent to the central woodland within the development. This gives you a view looking north of the property. So what's proposed is a swimming pool, and I believe it's actually already been constructed. So they're looking again for a variance to the pool requirement to have fencing around the pool. This is the plan for the pool area in the rear of the lot. It would have a retractable cover, and it has actually been constructed. So you can see in the image they have the pool cover on the pool, and this just gives you a different view within the rear yard. Again, similar to the other cases, we find that there can be a beneficial use of the property without the proposed variance, and that it's substantial, and that it could be addressed through other methods other than the variance, and the staff respectfully recommends disapproval of the variance.
Are there any questions for staff?
Could you please go back to the picture showing the cover, please? Is that a hard cover that we have previously approved? It's,
Well, let's
Okay,
ask them when they get up here.
I mean, it seems that they're consistent with the ones that you've seen in the past and approved.
okay.
Is there already an existing fence there?
Yes, there is an existing fence. At least the information given by the pool company was that the fence was installed previously. I know that the permit for the pool, as far as the electrical and the zoning certificate for the pool were approved, I believe, at the end of last year. So this is a request to clean up all of the record for the property.
All right, the applicant, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tasha Jones. Do you want my company address or my physical address?
Your business address is fine.
Okay, business address is 3812 April Lane, Columbus, Ohio, 43227.
Okay.
So I actually put in the application for the variance because the clients, the Toms, actually have an automatic pool cover, and they had an existing fence. The previous homeowner had the fence installed and did not do it with a permit. I didn't know that when I started with the company, and I had erroneously put in a fence application, but they didn't need it because the fence was already installed. And thusly, I went and did my final inspections, and the zoning inspector, Forrest Runnels, said that the fence needed to be erected. And then I told him that there was a fence already there and that there was an automatic pool cover. And then he told me to apply for the variance. And then we have 2 or 3 other clients in that same neighborhood that already have variances approved for the automatic pool cover, which meet ASTM standard, and it will remain locked and covered when not in use. And they also have children at the residence, so it's of high importance to them that they're meeting standard. They wouldn't want their kids getting hurt, so I'm just trying to,
Is this a pool cover that could handle somebody walking on it?
yeah, you could put a golf cart on it and ride it if you wanted to.
I hope I don't find that out.
We did have someone ride a motorcycle
always play
across
down
it.
the middle, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, that's why I went back to this picture, because it looked,
It looks in, yeah, it just has a little bit of give, so you can walk on it, but no water recedes, it still fits inside the liner. I've jumped on it. Really, I'm new to the pool industry, so I was like, this is a lie, but it's not.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
So the fence isn't going away, correct?
No, it's staying.
Okay.
It just wasn't,
A double,
they didn't have proof that there was a permit for a fence, so in their eyes, it's not there. So,
And maybe they weren't able to get it. Is there a permit for the fence?
I put an application in, but there was no fence contractor, there was no fence to be installed, so there shouldn't have been a fence application.
There is a pending fence permit that's open. Usually, the process would be to obtain a zoning certificate, get a fence permit, and those two are contingent or necessary so that you can go ahead and get the electrical permit. For whatever reason, in this case, that didn't happen. And when we were going through that process, the zoning inspector noticed that there was missing information, which is how the fence issue came to light. By code, you need to have the self, latching and locking gate, and we didn't have information on that. So in following up with that, we've determined that there's actually a pool there, and so we need to get that resolved one way or another. So either getting the fence permit finalized for all of the latching, gate and lock that's necessary, or to get the pool cover approved.
We're on final inspections for this, so I just want certificate of occupancy.
Final inspections for the pool?
Yeah, like we're finishing.
Okay,
yeah,
so
we're
the
just-
pool was installed with permits and?
Yeah, everything was
Everything by the book.
clean and perfect,
Okay.
just the fence issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public? You certainly may. Just state your name and address, please.
So the fence was put in by a relatively large fencing company called May Fencing. It was done prior to us purchasing the property. So we actually have only 2 entrances from the gates, which is also padlocked at all times. So we know that the auto cover that's always locked with a pin can withstand up to 2,000 pounds. So that's what we were guaranteed when we purchased the pool. So the gate is always closed, and you cannot get into our property. So I feel like we have double coverage with the auto fence and also the gate. And we try to call the previous owner and the fencing company, and they're trying to get back to us, but because we weren't the ones that paid for the fence previously, they're pretty slow on getting back to us. But it is a relatively large bonded fencing company, and it did meet code to our understanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you the property owner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Case number 8, BZA 22-27, to approve a variance to section, here's code 1121.02 D5, to permit an automatic pool cover in lieu of a fence around the pool, and with the staff recommendations that the pool cover be maintained in good order and is locked and closed when the pool's not in use.
I'll second.
Vice Chair Epling?
Yes.
Mr. Donato? Mr. Stepp?
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair?
Yes?
And Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
What's next month look like?
Anybody,
That's a record for me.
do we have any communications from staff?
Just tentatively, we have the potential for a couple cases next month, so it should be a little easier.
Does anybody feel bad about case number 1? Want to make a motion? No? Okay. I move that we adjourn.
Oh, John, can I tell him what we talked to Michelle about?
Oh,
Okay, so because the pool covers and the fencing around the jacuzzis has come up several times since I've been here, John and Michelle had talked, and City Council would like to address that, hopefully, when things start to slow down a little bit, but hopefully by the end of this year, so we won't have to have this.
all right.
Did you happen to see my
adjourn.
note? You happen to see my note on Franklin Street?
On which one?
All the weeds on Franklin Street?
Yeah, that's, we, that's a continuous,
Back with a vengeance.
but he did cut all the stuff, it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what it was.
What's that?
Eyesore on case number 1.
It does, but I think it sounded like the basis for some of that was the level of the hot tub.
I don't think that came up during the actual discussion of case 1.